In her darkest moment, she found safety in the heartbeat of someone who barely knew her story. The rain tapped against the window like tiny fingers asking to come inside. David sat at his small wooden desk, surrounded by psychology textbooks and scattered notes. The apartment felt bigger than usual tonight, quieter too. His roommate Ryan had left that morning to deal with a family emergency back home, leaving behind an unusual guest. David glanced toward the hallway where Ryan's younger sister was staying. Her name was Anna, and she'd been visiting for 3 days now. She was supposed to go back to college on Sunday, but with Ryan gone, she seemed stuck. David didn't mind the company, but something about her worried him. When Anna first arrived on Thursday, she seemed normal enough. She laughed at Ryan's jokes, helped cook dinner, and even joined them for a movie. But as the days passed, David noticed small changes. She became quieter, spent more time in her room, and barely touched her food. Dark circles appeared under her eyes like she wasn't sleeping well. David knew about these signs. He was studying to become a counselor, learning how to help people through difficult times. His professors always said to trust your gut when something felt off. Right now his gut was practically screaming. He tried to focus on his thesis about helping people heal from bad experiences. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was writing about trauma, while someone possibly dealing with trauma sat just down the hall. But he couldn't just walk up to her and ask what was wrong. They barely knew each other. The apartment felt different with just the two of them there. During the day, Anna would venture out to the kitchen or living room, making small talk about school or the weather. But David could see something behind her smile, something that made her hand shake slightly when she thought no one was looking. On Friday evening, Anna's phone rang during dinner. David was in the kitchen cleaning up when he heard her voice. Changed completely. It went from normal to small and scared in seconds. He couldn't hear the words, but he could hear the tone getting sharper, more upset. The call ended abruptly and Anna appeared in the kitchen doorway looking pale. "Everything okay?" David asked, trying to sound casual while drying a plate. Anna nodded quickly. Too quickly. "Yeah, just someone from school." But her voice cracked on the last word, and she disappeared back into Ryan's room. That night, David heard her pacing. The old apartment had thin walls, and he could hear her footsteps going back and forth across the small bedroom floor. It went on for hours. He almost knocked on her door twice, but talked himself out of it. What would he say? What if he was wrong about sensing something was off? Saturday was worse. Anna barely came out of the room at all. When she did, she jumped at small sounds like the coffee maker beeping or a car door slamming outside. David made extra food and left a plate by her door, but it sat there untouched for hours. He found himself checking his phone constantly, hoping Ryan would call with an update about when he'd be back. But Ryan's dad was in the hospital, and there was no telling how long that situation would take. David's training kicked in. He remembered his professor talking about how sometimes people in crisis need someone to simply be present, not to fix everything, just to be there. But how do you be present for someone who's hiding behind a closed door? On Saturday evening, David knocked gently on Ryan's bedroom door. "Anna, I'm making tea. Would you like some?" There was a long pause before she answered. That's really nice, thank you." When she came to the kitchen, David noticed her hands were shaking again. She wrapped them around the warm mug like she was trying to absorb the heat. They sat at the small table, not really talking, just sharing the quiet space. "Ryan should be back tomorrow or Monday," David said, hoping to provide some comfort. Anna nodded, but her eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away. "I know. It's fine. I'm fine." But she wasn't fine, and they both knew it. After she went back to her room, David made a decision. He would stay up and keep an ear out for any signs she needed help. His thesis could wait. Sometimes being human was more important than homework. He set up his books in the living room, close enough to hear if anything happened but far enough to give her space. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, marking time as the evening stretched into night. Around 10 o'clock, Anna's phone rang again. This time David could hear her voice through the thin walls, and it wasn't good. She was saying no repeatedly, her voice getting higher and more distressed. Then there was silence, followed by what sounded like crying. David's chest tightened. Every instinct he had was telling him something was seriously wrong. This wasn't just homesickness or normal college stress. This was something deeper, something that was eating away at her peace of mind. He thought about his textbooks, all the case studies he'd read about people in crisis. The signs were all there: withdrawal, loss of appetite, hypervigilance, emotional volatility. Someone had hurt her, or was still hurting her, and she was carrying that pain alone. The apartment fell quiet again, but it was a heavy quiet, the kind that sits on your chest and makes it hard to breathe. David closed his psychology book and listened to the rain still pattering against the window. Tomorrow would bring another day, but tonight felt like a turning point, like something was about to change. He had no idea how right he was. In the room down the hall, Anna sat on the edge of Ryan's bed staring at her phone. The screen showed 17 missed calls and dozens of messages, all from the same person. Someone who was supposed to care about her, but had made her life a nightmare instead. She was tired of being afraid, tired of jumping at every sound, tired of feeling like she couldn't breathe properly. But most of all, she was tired of being alone with her fear. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing the world clean for whatever was coming next. The clock showed 2:30 a.m. when David heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold and his heart race. It started as quiet whimpering, then grew into something that sounded like pure terror. Anna was crying, but not just crying. She was gasping for air like she was drowning. David dropped his pen and stood up so fast his chair nearly fell over. Every lesson from his psychology classes flooded back to him. This wasn't regular sadness. This was something much worse. He rushed down the hallway and knocked on Ryan's bedroom door. Anna, are you okay?" The only response was more gasping and what sounded like choking. David's training kicked in completely now. Someone was in serious distress, and waiting for permission might be too late. "I'm coming in," he called out, then slowly opened the door. What he saw broke his heart. Anna was curled up in the corner of the room, pressed against the wall like she was trying to disappear into it. Her whole body was shaking, and she was breathing so fast it looked painful. Her eyes were wide with fear, but she seemed to be looking through him rather than at him. Hey, you're okay," David said softly, keeping his distance but making sure she could see him. "You're safe. I'm David, remember? Ryan's roommate. You're in our apartment." But Anna didn't seem to hear him. She kept gasping and shaking, her hands clutched against her chest. David recognized this immediately from his textbooks. It was a panic attack, and a bad one. He sat down on the floor a few feet away from her, making himself smaller and less threatening. "Anna, I need you to try to breathe with me, okay? Can you look at me?" Her eyes found his face, but they were filled with such fear that David felt his own chest tighten. Whatever had triggered this was serious. "Good, that's good," he said, keeping his voice calm and steady. "Now I want you to breathe, and when I breathe in, watch my chest, okay?" David took a slow, deep breath, making it obvious so she could follow along. Anna tried to copy him, but her breathing was still too fast, too shallow. "It's okay, we'll keep trying," David said. "You're doing great. Just focus on my voice and try to breathe with me." It took nearly 10 minutes, but slowly, very slowly, Anna's breathing began to match his. Her shaking didn't stop, but it became less violent. The terrified look in her eyes started to clear, and she began to see him properly. "There you go," David said gently. "You're doing so well. Can you tell me where you are right now?" Your apartment," Anna whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's right. You're in Ryan's room, and you're safe here. Nobody can hurt you." At the word hurt, Anna's face crumpled and fresh tears started flowing. But these were different tears. Not the panicked gasping from before, but deep, sad crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to wake you up. I tried to be quiet." Don't apologize, David said firmly but kindly. You have nothing to be sorry for. Are you hurt? Do you need me to call someone? Anna shook her head, quickly. No, please don't call anyone, please. David studied her face. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't really slept in days. Her eyes were red and swollen, and there was something in her expression that reminded him of the case studies he'd read about people who'd been through terrible experiences. Anna, can you tell me what triggered this? Did something happen? She was quiet for a long moment, and David waited patiently. He'd learned that pushing someone in crisis usually made things worse. He called again. She finally said, so quietly, he almost didn't hear her. Who called? My ex-boyfriend. The way she said it made David's stomach turn. There was fear in those words, real fear. What did he say? Anna wrapped her arms around herself. He said he knows where I am. He said he's coming to get me. He said. She stopped and started crying, again. David felt anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Anna needed calm support right now, not his anger at some guy he'd never met. Anna, has he hurt you before? She nodded, not looking at him. Physically, another nod. Recently. I broke up with him 3 weeks ago, she whispered. But he won't leave me alone. He calls all the time. He follows me around campus. He told my friends I was crazy and turned some of them against me. I came here to get away from him, but somehow he found out where I am. David's training helped him stay calm, but inside he was furious. This wasn't just a bad breakup. This was harassment, possibly stalking. No wonder Anna had been so jumpy and scared. Have you told anyone about this? Your parents? The police? Anna shook her head. He's really smart about it. He never says anything threatening in texts where there's proof. And when he does stuff, he makes it look like an accident or like I'm imagining things. People think I'm being dramatic. David understood now why Anna had been so withdrawn. She was carrying this fear alone, afraid that no one would believe her or help her. I believe you, he said simply. And you're not being dramatic. What you're describing is serious, and you don't have to deal with it alone. For the first time since he'd found her in the corner, Anna really looked at him. You believe me? Completely. And we're going to figure out how to help you, okay? But right now the most important thing is that you're safe. He doesn't know exactly where you are, and even if he did, he can't get into this apartment. Anna nodded, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her shirt. Do you think you can try to get some sleep? I can stay nearby if that would help. Would you? She asked, sounding younger than her 22 years. Of course. Let me grab a pillow and I'll sleep on the floor right outside this door. If you need anything at all, just call my name. For the first time in days, Anna managed a small, grateful smile. Thank you, David. Really? As David set up his makeshift bed in the hallway, he realized this night had changed everything. Anna wasn't just Ryan's sister anymore. She was someone who needed help, and he was going to make sure she got it. David lay on the hallway floor, staring at the ceiling. His makeshift bed of pillows and blankets wasn't comfortable, but comfort wasn't the point. Every few minutes he could hear Anna shifting in the room next to him, and he wanted her to know she wasn't alone. The apartment was quiet except for the occasional car passing by outside. David thought about everything Anna had told him. The fear in her voice when she talked about her ex-boyfriend made his chest tight with anger. Nobody should have to live like that, constantly looking over their shoulder, afraid of their own. Phone ringing. Around 3 a.m. he heard Anna get up and walk around the room. Then everything went quiet again. David assumed she'd gone back to bed, but 20 minutes later, he heard her door open very quietly. David? Her voice was barely a whisper. Yeah, I'm here. Everything okay? I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I keep thinking I hear his voice or his car outside. I know it sounds crazy. David sat up on his pile of blankets. It doesn't sound crazy at all. Your mind is trying to protect you by staying alert. It's actually pretty normal after what you've been through. There was a long pause. David could see Anna's silhouette in the doorway, but he couldn't make out her face in the darkness. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. Why are you being so nice to me? Most people would think I'm being dramatic or making a big deal, out of nothing." David thought about his answer carefully. "Because I'm studying to be a counselor, and I've learned that when someone is scared, there's usually a good reason. But honestly, even if I wasn't studying psychology, I'd still want to help. Nobody deserves to feel unsafe." Anna was quiet for another long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was shaky. "I used to be different, you know. Before him, I used to laugh a lot and feel confident about things. I had opinions and dreams, and I don't know who I am anymore." David's heart ached for her. He'd read about this in his textbooks, how emotional abuse could make someone lose their sense of self. But reading about it and hearing it from someone real was completely different. "That person is still there," he said gently. "She's just buried under a lot of hurt right now, but she's still you." "How do you know?" "Because I can see glimpses of her. When you smile even just a little bit, there's something bright there, and the fact that you had the courage to break up with him shows how strong you really are." David heard Anna take a shaky breath. "I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm falling apart." Sometimes falling apart is the first step to putting yourself back together in a better way. "Is that from one of your psychology books?" Anna asked, and David could hear a tiny hint of humor in her voice. "Actually, I think I heard it in a movie," David admitted, and was surprised to hear Anna let out a small laugh. "Great, so you're giving me movie advice instead of professional counseling advice." "Well, I'm not a professional yet, just a guy who cares about people and happens to have some textbooks." They talked quietly for another hour. Anna told him more about how things had been with her ex, how he'd slowly isolated her from friends, made her doubt her own memory of events, and convinced her that nobody else would ever care about her the way he did. David listened without judgment, occasionally, offering validation or gentle questions. As they talked, David noticed Anna seemed to be getting more tired. Her voice was becoming softer, and there were longer pauses between her responses. "Anna, you should try to get some rest," he said finally. "I know, I'm still scared. What if he really does show up here? What if he finds a way in?" David considered this. Ryan's apartment was on the second floor, and the doors had good locks. But Anna's fear was real, even if the immediate danger might not be. "Tell you what," he said. "What if I sleep on the floor in Ryan's room tonight? That way you'll know for sure that someone's there if anything happens. You would do that?" "Of course, I'll just drag my pillow in there and sleep by the door. That way you can actually rest." "But that's Ryan's room, it might be weird." "Ryan would understand. And honestly, it's not weird if it helps you feel safe." Anna was quiet for a moment. "Okay, thank you." David gathered up his pillow and blanket and followed Anna back into Ryan's room. She got back into the bed while he arranged his makeshift sleeping area on the floor near the door. The room felt different with both of them in it, less lonely somehow. "David?" Anna's voice came from the darkness. "Yeah? Thank you for believing me, and for not making me feel like I'm crazy. You're not crazy. You're dealing with something really difficult, and you're handling it better than you think." They lay in the comfortable darkness for a while. David could hear Anna's breathing becoming slower and more regular. Just when he thought she'd fallen asleep, she spoke again. "I keep thinking about what my life was like before I met him. I had plans and goals. I wanted to travel after graduation, maybe teach art to kids. He convinced me those were stupid dreams." "They're not stupid dreams," David said firmly. "They're beautiful dreams. Do you think it's possible to get back to that? To feel like myself again?" "I know it is. It might take time and it might be hard work, but you can absolutely get back to who you were. Maybe even become someone stronger." Anna was quiet for several minutes, and David thought she'd finally fallen asleep. But then she said something that surprised him. "I feel safer than I have in weeks, just knowing you're here." David felt the weight of that trust, and it both honored and scared him. Someone who had been hurt was choosing to trust him, and he didn't take that lightly. "I'm glad," he said simply. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we can figure out some next steps." As Anna's breathing finally evened out into sleep, David lay awake thinking about how much had changed in just one night. A few hours ago, he'd been worried about a thesis paper. Now he was helping someone rebuild their sense of safety and self-worth. He realized this was exactly why he wanted to become a counselor, to be there for people in their darkest moments and help them find their way back to the light. David woke up to sunlight streaming through Ryan's bedroom window. For a moment, he forgot where he was, then remembered everything from the night before. He looked over at the bed and saw Anna was still sleeping, looking more peaceful than he'd seen her since she arrived. He quietly gathered his pillow and blanket and slipped out of the room to give her privacy. In the kitchen, he started making coffee and thought about everything that had happened. Anna had trusted him with something huge last night, and he wanted to make sure he handled it right. Around 9 o'clock, he heard movement from Ryan's room. Anna appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing one of Ryan's old college sweatshirts, looking embarrassed. "Good morning," David said gently, pouring her a cup of coffee. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks," Anna admitted, accepting the warm mug gratefully. "Thank you for staying in there. I know it was probably weird for you." "It wasn't weird at all. I'm just glad you got some rest." They sat at the small kitchen table, and David noticed Anna looked different in the morning light. The constant tension in her shoulders seemed less intense, and some color had returned to her face. "I've been thinking," David said carefully, "about what you told me last night. Have you considered talking to someone professional about all this?" Anna's face tightened. "Like a therapist? Maybe. Or even a counselor at your school. Someone who knows about these situations and can help you figure out your options. I tried calling the counseling center at my college once," Anna said quietly, "but when they asked me to describe what was happening, I couldn't find the right words. It all sounded so normal when I said it out loud, like I was complaining about regular relationship stuff." David nodded. "That's actually really common. People who hurt others are often really good at making their behavior seem normal, or making the person being hurt feel like they're overreacting." "Exactly," Anna said, looking relieved that he understood. "And he's charming to everyone else. My roommate thinks he's wonderful. Some of my friends think I'm lucky to have someone who cares so much about me. But you know the difference between caring and controlling, right?" Anna was quiet for a moment, stirring her coffee. "I do now. It took me a long time to see it, but I do now." They talked more about her situation over breakfast. David learned that Anna had been isolated from most of her support system, that her ex had convinced her to change her major to something he approved of, and that she'd stopped doing most of the things she used to enjoy because they caused arguments. "The crazy thing is," Anna said, "I keep wondering if I'm being unfair to him. Like maybe he really does love me and I'm just ungrateful." "That's not crazy at all," David said. "It shows how much he messed with your ability to trust your own feelings. But Anna, love doesn't make someone afraid. Love doesn't make someone give up their dreams or friends." As the morning wore on, Anna seemed to become more like herself. She laughed at David's stories about his psychology professors and even shared some funny memories from her art classes. David could see glimpses of who she used to be: creative, funny, thoughtful. But around noon, Anna's phone started buzzing. With notifications, her whole body tensed up immediately. "You don't have to look at those," David said, noticing her hands starting to shake again. "I should. What if it's important?" "Anna, look at me." David waited until she met his eyes. "Nothing he has to say to you is important enough to ruin the progress you've made today. Nothing." Anna took a deep breath and turned her phone face down on the table. "You're right. I know you're right." But the spell was broken. The relaxed version of Anna from that morning disappeared, replaced by the anxious, hyper-vigilant person David had found in crisis the night before. "I can't do this," Anna said suddenly, standing up from the table. "I can't keep living like this. I can't keep being scared of my own phone. I can't keep jumping at every noise. This isn't living." David could see she was getting worked up again, but this felt different from the panic attack. This felt like anger, and maybe that was good. "You're absolutely right," he said. "This isn't living, so what do you want to do about it?" "I want to feel safe again. I want to sleep through the night. I want to stop looking over my shoulder everywhere I go." Anna's voice was getting stronger. "I want to remember who I was before him." Those are all completely reasonable things to want. But I don't know how to get there. I don't know how to make him stop. David had been thinking about this all morning. You might not be able to make him stop, but you can get help dealing with it. There are people who specialize in these situations. Resources, legal options maybe. Legal options? What he's doing sounds like harassment, possibly stalking. There might be ways to legally make him stay away from you. Anna looked hopeful for the first time. Really? I think so. But we'd need to talk to someone who knows more about it than I do. They spent the afternoon researching resources online. David helped Anna find information about restraining orders, campus safety resources, and counseling services that specialized in relationship abuse. For the first time since arriving, Anna seemed to have some sense of hope and direction. That evening, as they made dinner together, Anna seemed different again. Not completely back to her old self, but stronger somehow. "David?" she said while chopping vegetables. "Yeah, last night when I was having that panic attack, I thought I was going crazy. I thought maybe he was right about me being too sensitive and dramatic. And now? Now I think maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe I was just scared and alone. And that's not the same thing." David smiled. "That's not the same thing at all." As they cooked together, David noticed Anna humming softly. It was the first time he'd heard her make any happy sound since she'd arrived. It was a small thing, but it felt like a victory. "Thank you," Anna said as they sat down to eat. "For what?" "For helping me remember that I'm not crazy, and for helping me believe that maybe I can get through this." "You can definitely get through this," David said. "And you don't have to do it alone." It was almost midnight when Anna made the decision that surprised both of them. David had been reading on the couch while Anna watched a movie, both of them comfortable in the quiet evening routine they'd developed over the past 2 days. "I can't sleep in Ryan's room tonight," Anna said suddenly, startling David out of his textbook. "Why not? Did something happen?" Anna shook her head, looking frustrated with herself. "It's stupid, but every time I close my eyes in there, I keep thinking about that first night. The panic attack, the phone calls. I know it doesn't make sense, but that room feels scary now." David closed his book and gave her his full attention. "That's not stupid at all. Sometimes places can hold bad memories, even if they're not actually dangerous. I was thinking maybe I could sleep on your couch. I know it's weird to ask." "It's not weird, and of course you can. But the couch isn't very comfortable. Are you sure you wouldn't rather I sleep on the couch and you take my bed?" Anna was quiet for a moment, then said something that caught David completely off guard. "Would it be totally inappropriate if I asked to sleep in your room? Not in a weird way, just I feel safer when you're nearby." David felt his face get warm. This was definitely not covered in any of his psychology textbooks. But looking at Anna's face, he could see she wasn't asking for anything romantic or inappropriate. She was asking for the most basic human comfort, not feeling alone in the dark. "I don't think that's inappropriate," he said carefully. "But I want to make sure you're asking for the right reasons. Not because you feel like you owe me something or because you think it's what I want." "It's not that at all," Anna said quickly. "It's just that when you stayed in Ryan's room, I felt safe for the first time in months. Really safe. And I know that's asking a lot, but..." "It's not asking a lot," David interrupted gently. "If it helps you feel safe, then we can figure it out." 20 minutes later, they had worked out a plan. David would sleep on the floor like he had before, and Anna would take his bed. It wasn't romantic or complicated. It was just 2 people, making sure one of them could get through the night without fear. But as they settled into the dark room, Anna spoke up again. "David, this is going to sound really strange." "What? Would you be okay sleeping on the bed too? Just sleeping, I mean." It's just that having you on the floor feels like you're a guard or something, and that makes me feel like I need guarding. But having you nearby, like as a friend, makes me feel normal." David's heart started beating faster. This was definitely moving into territory he wasn't prepared for. But Anna's voice was so honest, so vulnerable, that he couldn't bring himself to say no. "If that's what would help you feel safe," he said finally. "It would. I promise it's not about anything else. I just need to know someone trustworthy is close by." David moved from his pile of blankets on the floor to the edge of his own bed, staying as far to one side as possible. The bed was small, but there was enough room for both of them without touching. They lay there in the darkness for a while, both of them probably overthinking the situation. Finally, Anna spoke. "Thank you for not making this weird, or thinking I'm crazy. I don't think you're crazy. I think you're someone who's been hurt trying to figure out how to feel safe again. Can I tell you something?" Of course. Before him, I never had trouble sleeping. I used to love bedtime. I'd read or listen to music and just drift off. But for months now, nighttime has been the worst time. That's when he'd call the most, when he'd send the scariest messages. I started being afraid to close my eyes. David felt a wave of anger at someone he'd never met. That must have been exhausting. It was. But right now, for the first time in forever, I'm not afraid to fall asleep. As if to prove her point, David could hear Anna's breathing starting to slow and deepen. She was actually relaxing, maybe for the first time since he'd known her. "David?" Her voice was getting sleepy. "Yeah? Do you think I'm going to be okay?" David thought about everything he'd learned in his classes, all the case studies and success stories he'd read about people recovering from trauma. But more than that, he thought about the strength he'd seen in Anna over the past few days. Her courage in leaving her ex, her honesty about her fear, her determination to get better. "I think you're going to be more than okay," he said. "I think you're going to be stronger than you were before." Anna was quiet for several minutes, and David thought she'd fallen asleep. But then she said something so softly he almost missed it. "I trust you." Those 3 words hit David harder than anything else she'd said. He knew how much courage it had taken for her to say them, how much it meant coming from someone whose trust had been broken so badly. "Thank you," he whispered back. "I won't let you down." Anna shifted slightly, getting more comfortable, and David realized she had moved closer to him. Not in a romantic way, but the way someone might move toward warmth on a cold night. Without thinking about it, she rested her head on his chest, right over his heart. David held perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. He could feel the weight of her head, could hear her breathing evening out as she finally, truly relaxed. His heart was beating hard, but not from attraction or nervousness. It was beating hard from the overwhelming feeling of being trusted by someone who had every reason not to trust anyone. As Anna fell asleep, listening to his heartbeat, David stared at the ceiling and thought about how much his life had changed in just a few days. He'd started the week worried about grades and graduation. Now he was helping someone rebuild their sense of safety and self-worth. This was exactly why he wanted to be a counselor, he realized. Not for the textbook cases or the professional recognition, but for moments like this, when someone who was falling apart found a way to feel whole again, even if just for one night. Anna slept peacefully through the night, and David stayed awake, watching over her, making sure she stayed safe while she healed.